I had always heard stories about the old woman in the marketplace. The women whispered about her in hushed tones, their voices laced with awe and fear. They said she could see the future, that her fabrics weren't just cloth, but woven destinies. Any young woman preparing for marriage would go to her, and with a single touch of the fabric, she would foretell the future of the union: happiness, betrayal, wealth, or destruction. The same for young men. She would bless them with cloth for their business ventures, predicting either great fortune or devastating failure. Some swore by her power, others warned against it. I had never paid much attention to such things until it became my turn. My name is Adais, and I was about to be married. My family was not wealthy, but we were good people, humble and hardworking. My mother, like all the women before her, insisted I visit the old woman before my wedding. She has blessed many marriages, my mother said as she pressed the coins into my palm. Go to her. Let her tell you what the gods have in store. I hesitated. Deep down, I feared the answer I might receive. But curiosity, no, something stronger, pulled me toward her. The market was alive with the scent of roasted maize and the sound of traders shouting over one another. But as I approached the old woman's corner, everything seemed to quiet. Her stall was unlike the others. Rows of fabric, more beautiful than anything I had ever seen, hung from the wooden frame. Reds as deep as blood, blues like the evening sky, golds that shimmered as if woven from the sun's light. And there she sat, wrapped in a thick shawl despite the heat, her eyes sharper than I expected for someone so old. She smiled when she saw me, as if she had been expecting me. "Ah," she said, her voice smooth yet heavy, like something dragging through water. "You have come for your fabric." I swallowed. "Yes." She gestured for me to sit, and as I lowered myself onto the small wooden stool, she reached for something beneath the counter: a roll of fabric, deep green, the color of life. She ran her fingers over it, humming softly, her eyes distant as though she was seeing something beyond the present moment. Then she looked at me, really looked at me. For the first time, I felt something cold curl around my spine. "You are in trouble," she murmured. My breath caught in my throat. "What?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She leaned closer, the wrinkles on her face deepening. "He's saying you're in trouble." My fingers tightened around the edge of my dress. "Who?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pushed the fabric toward me. "Take this," she said, "but be careful. Not every thread woven into fate is meant to be unraveled." A shiver ran through me. The marketplace noise returned, the world snapping back to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. As I stood, fabric in hand, I realized something. This was no ordinary cloth. And the old woman, she was no ordinary seer. And whatever she had seen in my future, it had terrified even her. The weight of the fabric in my hands felt heavier than it should. It wasn't just cloth, it was a warning, a whisper of something unseen. As I walked home through the narrow village paths, I felt eyes on me. Every rustling leaf, every distant voice seemed to hold a secret I wasn't meant to know. My mother was waiting by the doorway when I arrived. Her face lit up when she saw the fabric. "Ah, Adaise, let me see what she gave you." I hesitated, then unrolled the fabric. The deep green shimmered under the late afternoon sun. My mother gasped. "This is a blessing. Green means prosperity. Your marriage will flourish." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to forget the old woman's words. But that night, as I lay in bed, I dreamt of threads unraveling, long, endless strands pulling apart, vanishing into nothingness, and a voice, low and distant, whispering, "He's saying you're in trouble." When I woke, sweat clung to my skin and my hands trembled. The fabric sat folded at the foot of my bed, looking innocent, but I knew something was wrong, and I had to find out what. I decided to return to the old woman the next day. I needed answers. The market was just as lively, but when I reached her stall, she wasn't there. The fabrics were untouched, as though she had vanished. A trader from the next stall, an elderly man with tired eyes, noticed me searching. "Looking for Mama Nwanyi?" I nodded. "She doesn't open her stall every day, but she always knows who will come to her." He gave me a knowing look. "She knew you would." A chill spread through me. I turned to leave when a woman, her face gaunt with worry, approached the stall. She clutched a piece of cloth, bright yellow, torn at the edges. "She lied to me," the woman whispered, voice shaking. "She said my husband and I would live in wealth, but he is dead. He died the day after our wedding." I stepped back, my heart pounding. The old woman wasn't just seeing fate, she was twisting it. I started asking questions, quietly, carefully. I found others, men and women, who had taken her fabric, who had believed in her words. Some had prospered, yes, but others had lost everything. It was as though she decided who would rise and who would fall. But why? I returned to her stall the next evening. This time she was there. She smiled when she saw me, as if amused by my return. "You have questions," she said simply. I nodded. "What did you mean when you said I was in trouble?" She ran her hand over the fabrics, her eyes unreadable. "Not all who come to me are meant to leave unchanged." I gritted my teeth. Are you are you controlling destinies?" She chuckled, a dry, brittle sound. "Child, people come to me because they want to know, but knowing comes at a price." "What price?" She leaned forward. "A piece of themselves, a thread in the grand weaving of fate." My stomach turned. I had taken her fabric. Had I already given her something? I dug deeper. The more I learned, the worse it became. Some women who received her fabric had simply disappeared. Their families spoke of them in hushed voices, as if they had never existed. One name kept coming up: Chinelo, a girl who had visited the old woman a year ago before her wedding. She had taken her fabric, and then nothing, no wedding, no life. I found her mother, an older woman with sorrow in her eyes. "She told my daughter her marriage would bring her power," she whispered. "But Chinelo never made it to the altar. She vanished." My chest tightened. The old woman wasn't just manipulating destinies, she was taking them. And I was next. I confronted her. I returned to her stall, clutching the green fabric in my hands. "What did you do to them?" I demanded. She sighed, as if tired of the question. "Some destinies must be rewritten." I slammed the fabric down. "I don't want this. I don't want anything from you." Her eyes cast gleamed. "It is too late, Adise. You accepted it the moment you touched it." I felt my breath hitch. My hands, they tingled as if something was inside me, threading itself through my veins. "You see, child," she continued, "you were never meant to marry." My blood ran cold. "What?" She smiled. "Your fate was already sealed. I simply ensured it." I woke the next morning to find a small mark on my wrist, like a thin black thread. It hadn't been there before. The villagers whispered that those marked by the old woman never lived the lives they planned. Some fell into madness, some simply faded away. I had to break free. I sought out the village priest, an elder who knew the ways of old magic. He examined my wrist, his face darkening. She has taken part of you, he murmured. To break it, you must return what she gave, the fabric. I raced to the old woman's stall. She watched me, unbothered, as I threw the green cloth at her feet. Take it back, I hissed. She chuckled. It doesn't work that way. Desperation clawed at me. Then how? Her gaze sharpened. You must take back what was stolen. I stared at her. The others, the ones you took, where are they? She only smiled. I searched for the missing girls. It led me deep into the forests, where the trees whispered secrets and the air felt thick with unseen eyes. And there, hidden among the roots, I found them. Chinelo, others, trapped, their bodies untouched but their souls hollow. The old woman had taken them, and if I didn't act fast, I would be next. Desperation clawed at me. Then how? Her gaze sharpened. You must take back what was stolen. I stared at her. The others, the ones you took, where are they? She only smiled. I confronted her one last time, this time with the priest and the villagers behind me. You have stolen from us, I declared. Oh, no more. She only laughed. Fools, you cannot fight fate. But fate was on our side. The priest raised his staff, and the air around us trembled. The villagers prayed, their voices rising like a storm. The old woman screamed as the magic turned against her. The fabrics at her stall burned, the colors twisting into nothingness. And then silence. She was gone. The mark on my wrist faded. The missing girls awoke, their eyes clear once more. The spell was broken. I never took a fabric for my wedding again. I never needed to, because destiny, I learned, was never meant to be stolen. It was meant to be chosen.